Lilith, Adam's first wife. Imagine a name so powerful and controversial that it has spanned millennia, oscillating between fear and fascination. That name is Lilith. But who was this enigmatic figure? Was she merely a dark myth, or a forgotten truth? To answer this question, we must go back to some of the oldest texts in human history. In Mesopotamian inscriptions, we find references to female spirits called Lilitu, associated with the wind and the night. However, the name Lilith only became solidified centuries later in Jewish tradition, where she is described as Adam's first wife, created at the same time and from the same material as him. Unlike Eve, who was formed from Adam's rib, Lilith did not see herself as inferior, and that was precisely what led to her tragic fate. Before we go any further, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because in the next videos we'll be exploring even more mysteries that you won't want to miss. But how was this story erased? Why did Lilith disappear from the most well-known versions of creation? To understand this, we need to examine a mysterious and controversial text that revived her legend, the Alphabet of Ben Sira. Written between the 8th and 10th centuries, the Alphabet of Ben Sira is one of the most enigmatic texts of medieval Judaism. In it, we find a completely different version of human creation. Adam was not the only being molded from clay. Lilith emerged alongside him. But unlike the submissive image of Eve, Lilith had an indomitable spirit. So what happened? When Adam tried to dominate her, Lilith refused to obey. "We were created equal," she is said to have declared. And in an act of unprecedented rebellion, she spoke God's sacred name and fled Eden, flying to the edges of the world. From that moment on, her story fragmented. Some depict her as a free and independent woman, while others portray her as a cursed being, doomed to wander in darkness. But what really happened after Lilith left Eden? And what was the terrible punishment imposed upon her? Lilith's departure from Eden did not go unnoticed. Adam was furious. He felt abandoned, rejected by the only other creature who shared his nature. He cried out to God, demanding justice. And God, heeding his plea, sent 3 angels to bring Lilith back. The angels found her at the edge of the Red Sea, a place that, according to tradition, harbored demonic forces. They gave her an ultimatum. Either she returned to Adam or she would face a cruel curse. But Lilith made her choice. She refused to return. As punishment, she was condemned to lose 100 of her children every day. This detail changed everything. What began as a story of freedom transformed into a tale of vengeance and suffering. From that moment on, Lilith was depicted as a dangerous being, a female spirit who kidnapped babies and tormented pregnant women. But was this a deliberate attempt to demonize her figure? And more importantly, if she never returned, where did she go after her escape? Lilith was alone, banished from paradise. Marked by a terrible curse, she found refuge in the winds of the night. Over time, her legend merged with stories of nocturnal and seductive female spirits. But something curious happened. While Lilith's name became synonymous with terror, she also began to inspire fascination. In some versions, Lilith was not punished merely for abandoning Adam, but for something even more profound: the forbidden knowledge she acquired when she spoke the divine name. This idea raises a disturbing question. What did Lilith truly discover? When she fled Eden, was she merely a victim of a distorted narrative, or did she uncover a secret that made her dangerous even to the Creator? Whatever the truth may be, her story does not end here. In esoteric traditions, Lilith becomes associated with occult forces and the world of demons. But who were these entities with whom she aligned herself? And what impact did this have on beliefs about the dark beings that haunt humanity to this day? So, did you already know these facts? Leave a comment if you've heard about them before. Let's talk. If Lilith refused to return to Adam and was banished from Eden, then what became of her? Some versions say that after fleeing to the Red Sea, she joined dark beings and became the mother of demons. But is there any truth to this story? Or was it merely an attempt to turn her into a symbol of fear? Ancient texts mention that Lilith became the consort of Samael, a fallen archangel often associated with Satan. From their union, the Lilith were born, demonic creatures linked to desire and illusion. Lilith is also frequently connected to entities known as succubi and incubi, beings that seduce humans in their sleep, draining their vital energy. But here's an intriguing detail. Figures resembling Lilith appear in many cultures, from ancient Sumerians to medieval Europe. Could they be different versions of the same legend scattered across the world? Or did her influence extend far beyond what we imagine? One thing is certain, Lilith never disappeared from history. On the contrary, her presence grew stronger, linking her to one of the oldest and most mysterious symbols of humanity, the moon. Since ancient times, the moon has symbolized femininity, mystery, and hidden power. And not coincidentally, Lilith has often been associated with it. But why? Lunar cycles have long been connected to women, fertility, and the forces of the night. And Lilith, described as a being who rejected submission and chose her own path, became a representation of what cannot be tamed. In many cultures, she came to symbolize the wild feminine, the untamed energy that refuses to conform. In astrology, there is even a point called Black Moon Lilith, representing repressed desires, hidden fears, and rebellion against social conventions. But this association wasn't accidental. For centuries, Lilith's name was used to warn women about the dangers of freedom, or perhaps about the power they could have if they defied the rules. And that is precisely what makes her story so intriguing. Was she merely a villain created to instill fear, or a powerful archetype that some traditions sought to erase? To answer this, we must examine how her story has been told throughout history, and how different cultures have interpreted her figure. What turns someone into a monster? Often it's not their actions, but how their story is told. And in Lilith's case, this transformation was drastic. Early records depicted her as an ambiguous entity, neither entirely evil nor completely benevolent. But over the centuries, the Judeo-Christian tradition reshaped her image. In medieval imagination, she became temptation itself, the witch, the female demon who corrupted men and threatened families. Let's keep going, but first I noticed you haven't hit the like button yet. If you're enjoying the content, go ahead and click the thumbs up. Interestingly, this process of demonization occurred alongside the repression of strong female figures in society. Women who defied norms were labeled as witches, seductresses, and heretics. Lilith fit perfectly into this role. However, in more recent times, the narrative has started to shift. Feminist and esoteric movements have reclaimed her image, not as a demonic entity, but as a symbol of autonomy and strength. But does this reinterpretation do justice to her story? Or are we simply creating a new Lilith for modern times? To answer this question, we need to explore how Lilith has been portrayed in different mythologies worldwide. The name Lilith may have roots in the Middle East, but her essence seems to transcend borders. Across various cultures, we find figures with similar characteristics: female spirits of the night, independent, seductive, and often feared. In Sumerian mythology, there were already mentions of the Lilitu, wind demons that roamed at night. In Greek folklore, Hecate and the Lamia shared traits with Lilith, female beings associated with witchcraft and seduction. In Hindu tradition, we find the Yakshinis, mysterious female spirits who could be both protective and destructive. But what does all of this mean? Was Lilith just another version of these ancient figures? Or does her legend conceal something even deeper, a lost connection between civilizations? One thing is undeniable: Lilith has survived the ages. And surprisingly, her influence has extended beyond religion, reaching literature, art, and pop culture. But how has such an ancient figure managed to reinvent herself so many times? For centuries, Lilith remained in the shadows of ancient texts, a legend known only to scholars and religious figures. But suddenly, she resurfaced, and not just as a mythological figure, but as an icon in literature, art, and even pop culture. In the 19th century, the English poet Dante Gabriel Rossetti portrayed Lilith as the first femme fatale, a hypnotic beauty who ensnared men with her seduction. Later, in the early 20th century, She appeared in the occult works of Aleister Crowley, linked to power and mystery, but it was in cinema, music, and comics that Lilith truly gained a new life. From a demonic villain in horror stories to an independent force in shows like Supernatural and chilling adventures of Sabrina, her image oscillated between seduction and empowerment. Curiously, her presence in pop culture always reflects society's fears and desires. In the past, Lilith was a warning about the dangers of female disobedience. Today, she has become a symbol of freedom and self-sufficiency. But this transformation raises an intriguing question. What does this new version of Lilith have to do with her original form? To understand this, we need to compare her with another female figure that shaped the collective imagination, Eve. If Lilith represents rebellion, Eve symbolizes obedience. But did this dichotomy always exist? Or was it created to reinforce a specific view of women's roles? While Eve is described as the perfect companion, molded from Adam's rib, Lilith is the woman who refused submission and paid the price for it. Throughout history, these two figures have been used to represent the two possible paths for the feminine: acceptance of the traditional role or transgression, and the resulting punishment. But there's a detail that few realize. Eve was also punished. Her curiosity and desire for forbidden knowledge led to the expulsion from paradise. In other words, both were punished for challenging boundaries. But why did one become the mother of humanity and the other a feared demon? Perhaps the answer lies in how myths were shaped to reflect the power structures of their time. What if the story had been told differently? If Lilith hadn't been demonized, what role might she have had? In mythology, to answer this, we need to look at the ancient rituals and beliefs that arose to protect people from her influence. If Lilith was seen as a threat, how did people protect themselves from her? Medieval Jewish texts mention amulets engraved with the names of the three angels who tried to bring her back to Eden. These talismans were hung in cradles to prevent Lilith from taking newborn babies. Additionally, specific incantations were used to keep her away from homes. In some traditions, pregnant women performed rituals to ensure Lilith wouldn't approach during childbirth. But her fear wasn't restricted to Judaism. In ancient cultures, similar rites were performed against female night spirits resembling Lilith. This leads us to an interesting reflection. If so many civilizations created myths about a dangerous female figure, was Lilith merely a symbol of male fear regarding female independence? Or was there something more behind these beliefs? In any case, Lilith never disappeared, and in today's world her image resurfaces stronger than ever. But what does this mean for the modern world? Centuries ago, Lilith was the enemy, the nightmare of mothers and the temptation of men. Today, she is an icon of feminism, a symbol of resistance against imposed norms. But does this reinterpretation do justice to her true story? Feminist movements have adopted her as an archetype of the woman who chooses her own freedom, even in the face of severe punishment. Her image appears in books, t-shirts, and even esoteric groups who invoke her as a figure of power and self-sufficiency. But there's a paradox in this reinterpretation. By transforming her into a modern symbol, are we moving further away from her original essence? Was Lilith really a libertarian rebel, or just a victim of a tradition that couldn't accept her existence? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: Lilith was never forgotten. From goddess to demon, from villain to heroine, her story continues to be retold, reflecting the fears and aspirations of each generation. After all, perhaps Lilith is not just a myth, but a mirror of humanity. Thanks for watching until the end. Don't forget to subscribe to keep receiving more amazing content like this.